After giving birth to a pair of children for Chu Hian, I left the world with the system. Before leaving, I told Chu Hian to take good care of our children. Chu Hian agreed, weeping profusely. 20 years later, I destroyed the system. Remembering my children from before, I returned to this world, but after completing an unknown number of missions, I destroyed the system that controlled me. Seizing its authority, I regained my freedom. By this time, I could already go home, but I suddenly remembered I had once given birth to a pair of children. That was a mission 20 years ago. The target was Emperor Chu Hian of Shi Kingdom. Although he was emperor, he unfortunately had difficulty conceiving, and was destined to have no heirs. Because there were no heirs to succeed to the throne, the various feudal lords vied to revolt after his sudden death, leading to a long period of chaos. To change this history, the system arranged for me to enter the palace to bear an heir for the dynasty on his behalf, and my physique had been modified, so as soon as I conceived, it would be twins. I still remember the children newly born, wrinkled and tiny. They lay in the cradle with their eyes closed, their features somewhat resembling mine. I didn't get to look for long, because the system urged me to leave. The method of leaving this world this time was to die from postpartum hemorrhage. My face quickly turned pale, and I could only use my last bit of strength to call out, "Your Majesty!" Hearing my voice, Chu Hian quickly held my hand, saying with deep affection, "Ah Yao, I'm here." He had no children for 6 years since ascending the throne, and suddenly getting a pair of children moved. At this moment, his feelings for me reached their peak. It was at this moment that I weakly requested, "Ah Yao is ill-fated, and in the future, I'm afraid I won't be able to stay by His Majesty's side anymore. Please treat our children kindly." Chu Hian's eyes welled up with tears. "I will, I promise you. I will never let anyone harm them." "Ah Yao, hold on, look at our children. How lovely they are. I've already thought of names for them. The prince will be called Bowling, and the princess Yuyi. How about it?" My soul left my body. The surrounding palace maids and eunuchs instantly knelt all over the floor, and said with immense sadness, "The empress has passed away." "Ah Yao." Chu Hian was grief-stricken, tightly held my gradually cooling body, and immediately announced that Prince Bowling would be made the crown prince. 20 years have passed, and the crown prince and princess should have both grown up by now. As their birth mother, even though giving birth to them was not my original intention, yet for so many years, separated from them, and not having fulfilled any of my motherly duties, I always carry a trace of guilt in my heart. This guilt is not enough to make me stay, but it has always been a knot in my heart, so, only when I know they are doing well can I leave with peace of mind. A flash of white light passed, and I returned to Shiguo. The capital was as lively as ever. No one noticed how I appeared in the empty alley. The common folks' attention was all on the imperial procession, approaching from a distance. Yellow. I retreated with the common folk, listening to their whispers, and only then did I learn that Chu Hian had taken his concubines, and the crown prince on an autumn hunt, and today was their return to the palace. Once the procession approached, I quietly raised my head, looking for familiar faces, and soon saw Chu Hian, riding on a tall, imposing horse. He was almost 50, yet still full of vigor, accompanied by a young man in splendid brocade and jade robes. Because the crowd was so dense, Chu Hian didn't notice my gaze. He was saying something lovingly to the young man, in brocade robes, who was half a step behind him, and they had a harmonious atmosphere. My gaze followed his, and landed on that young man's face, feeling a bit hesitant. Why do his features not resemble my memory? And why does he not look like Chu Hian and me? I quietly asked a scholar next to me, "Is the one beside the emperor His Highness Bifei-Alfeg?" The scholar's eyes widened in surprise upon hearing this sudden question. "What nonsense are you spouting? The condemned crown prince was executed by imperial decree 5 years ago for treason. Who are you, not to even know this?" Upon hearing the scholar's words, My heart sank. Before he could speak again, I moved my finger, using the system's authority to erase our recent conversation. The scholar originally had a face full of astonishment. After that segment of memory disappeared, the astonishment turned into confusion. He scratched his head. "What did you just ask me again?" I looked at him, complexity flashing deep in my eyes. I had thought of many things, and it was for the crime of treason. 5 years ago. He was only 15. Right. How could he possibly commit treason? Moreover, he was Chu Hian's only son. The country was originally going to be handed over to him. If Bowling is already dead, then who is the crown prince the common people speak of? I stared intently at the scholar, narrowing my eyes, and once again used the system's ability, hypnotizing him. How did Bowling die, and who replaced him? The scholar was startled, looked into my eyes, and unconsciously spoke. The deposed crown prince, I heard, was poisoned to death by the emperor. After his death, His Highness Hongyang replaced him as the crown prince. I raised an eyebrow slightly. His Highness Hongyang, who is he? The scholar's eyes were still vacant, his voice low and fast. He is the son of Empress Lin. After Empress Lu passed away, the emperor was heartbroken, and visited their former pleasure palace several times to mourn the late. One accidental time, a palace maid serving there became pregnant. The emperor had few heirs. Besides the deposed Crown Prince Bowling and Princess Yi, he had no other children. So this palace maid was conferred the title of Meren, brought into the imperial harem, and 10 months later gave birth to Imperial Prince Hongyang, was conferred the title of Shufei, and rose steadily through the ranks. 5 years ago, the disgraced crown prince was poisoned to death. His Royal Highness Hongyang took over the Eastern Palace, and consort Lin Shufei was also appointed as the Empress consort. Is that so? Hearing all this, my hands in my sleeves involuntarily clenched, and my voice was full of coldness. The system had clearly told me that Chu Hian would have no children throughout his life. Besides a modified body, it was impossible for ordinary women to conceive his child. How did this Empress Lin manage to get pregnant out of thin air? This was simply impossible. I wanted to ask more, but the scholar's eyes were gradually regaining clarity. The hypnosis only lasted for half a cup of tea's time, so while he was still somewhat confused, I quickly left the alley. As I was about to walk through the crowd, a slender hand suddenly gripped my wrist tightly. I instinctively prepared to counterattack, but froze when I saw the appearance of the person behind me. A refined young man's shadow flashed across my eyes, like a dragonfly touching the water, gradually turning into the mature face before me. Imperial sister-in-law, he spoke, his tone very certain. I didn't expect the first familiar person I'd encounter to be him, Chu Hian's third brother, Prince Rong Chu Lanyuan, I retorted. You've got the wrong person. But he was very firm, staring at me without blinking. Although I don't know why your appearance hasn't changed, I'm very sure it is you. Lu Yao, you're back. Are you resurrected? He reached out his hand to touch me, but I turned cold and dodged his touch. Even if I'm no longer Chu Hian's empress, it doesn't mean I'm familiar enough with him for him to be handsy. Chu Lanyuan's fingers missed, and his expression was a little lost. Forget it. Come with me. Whatever you want to inquire about, just ask me directly. He walked forward, and I hesitated for a moment. I have too many questions in my heart right now that need answers, and Chu Lanyuan is, after all, Chu Han's brother, so he definitely knows the inside story better than anyone else. How exactly did Bowling die? As soon as I got into the carriage, I couldn't help but ask him. Chu Lanyuan looked outside, signaled the coachman to drive, and then lowered his voice to reply. It is a long story. Bowling and General Lu's letters were intercepted, and they implicitly contained intentions of rebellion. The imperial brother ordered a search, and in his residence, they found a map of the imperial palace's city defenses, and also sorcery items used to curse the imperial brother. Both charges are capital offenses. The imperial brother was furious and, in a fit of rage, my heart felt like it had been stabbed, and I clutched my clothes tightly, frowning and asking, "But why would he rebel?" Chu Lanyuan looked deeply at me, seemingly with some reluctance, and shook his head, saying, "His servants said it was because he had harbored dissatisfaction towards imperial brother for a long time. Ever since Empress Lin appeared, Beiling became disrespectful, repeatedly contradicted Empress Lin, and when Hongyang was young, even almost drowned Hongyang. Imperial brother believed he harbored jealousy and had poor character, and had already punished him several times. When the rebellion broke out, even though Beiling vehemently denied it, imperial brother no longer believed him. Chu Lanyuan sighed. "I don't believe Beiling would rebel, but the enraged imperial brother wouldn't listen to any dissuasion and insisted on killing him." "Imperial sister-in-law, where exactly have you been all these years? If you were still here, Beiling wouldn't have come to this." My heart felt like it was bleeding, and my lips were bitten until they turned white. For a moment, I felt a bit lost, and murmured, "But when I left, Chu Hian clearly promised me that he would take good care of them, but he didn't do a single one." Chu Lanyuan also seemed to have been dissatisfied with Chu Hian for a long time, and accused, "Did you know that the Lu family, suspected of rebellion, was also imprisoned, and their entire family executed?" "What?" Hearing that the Lu family, whose body I borrowed, was also implicated, my fists instantly clenched. Chu Lanyuan's expression was somewhat sorrowful. 20 years is enough to change too many people and things. An old acquaintance of yours is now in my residence. You two should catch up. The carriage stopped an hour later. I met the old acquaintance Chu Lanyuan mentioned in the imperial residence, but found that person was almost unrecognizable. I tentatively made a sound, and the woman with her eyes tightly shut, as if startled, suddenly raised her head and said, "Niang Yang, is that you? Niang Yang, your servant finally waited for your spirit in heaven to return. To clear the princess and crown prince's names." She limped and fumbled her way over, but almost fell because she couldn't see the path. I quickly helped her steady, caressing the hideous scars on her face at close range, feeling both angry and pained deep down. Who hurt you like this?" Chun Wan, my former head palace maid, who was once a respected gugu in the imperial palace, now ended up with her face completely disfigured, blind eyes, and a lame foot. Chun Wan's lips trembled, and she cried incessantly in my arms, "Niang Niang, it really is you." I embraced her, and told her I was back. Chun Wan quickly accepted the fact of my resurrection, and told me everything that had happened in the palace. Over the years in detail. At first, when I passed away, Chu Hian did indeed miss me for a while, even leaving the empress position vacant for many years. Beiling and Yu Yi, as his only 2 children, received boundless affection. Chu Hian personally kept them by his side to instruct them, just as he had promised, not allowing anyone to harm them. But ever since Lin Lian appeared, he changed. Concubine Lin, who just entered the palace, had a small, delicate face, and under the candlelight, she closely resembled Chu Hian's deceased white moonlight consort Yun. But compared to consort Yun, Lin Lian was much more ruthless. She first provoked Princess Yu Yi with words, pretended to fall, and almost lost her child. Then, after giving birth to Hongyang, she once again used her child's life to frame Beiling for being jealous of his brother. The brother and sister grew more and more estranged from Chu Hian because of her schemes. Finally, when Lin Lian wanted my relic, the golden-winged crabble hairpin, Beiling erupted in front of everyone. He reprimanded Lin Lian, saying she was unworthy to touch my relics, and tearfully said to Chu Hian, "Father Emperor, these are things Mother Empress left behind. Have you forgotten your feelings for Mother Empress from back then?" Although Beiling had never seen me, palace servants like Chun Wan often mentioned in his ear how good I was, and how loving Chu Hian and I were, which is why Beiling questioned Chu Hian in such a way. But Chu Hian, upon hearing it, only felt after all, I had been dead for many years. No matter how much affection there was in the past, it had faded. Just like after Consort Yun died, he shifted his affection to me, and after I died, he shifted his affection to Lin Lian. He didn't like someone reminding him daily how much his actions had wronged. The more guilty he felt, the more he became furious out of shame. Of course I know, this is the late Empress's memento. But in the end, it is nothing more than a hairpin. Crown Prince, you're becoming increasingly disrespectful. In front of me, you dare to talk back to your concubine Shu. Yu Yi cried out of grievance. Clearly she is bullying us because Mother Empress is gone, wanting to take over Mother Empress's memento. Shut up, Chu, Hian said sternly, only caring about protecting Lin Lian. And frowned, saying, this golden-winged begonia, hairpin was bestowed by me upon the late Empress. Now that I am taking it back, and bestowing it upon Lian, it doesn't count as taking the Empress's memento. Bowling and Yu Yi's faces were pale, and they stared incredulously at Chu Hian, as if they couldn't believe he could say such words. But Chu Hian just did it anyway. He ordered someone to fetch the hairpin, and personally placed it on Lin Lian's hairbun. Lin Lian curved her lips into a faint smile, triumphantly stroking the golden hairpin on her bun, attending all sorts of banquets in the palace, flaunting herself grandly. But after a few days, she threw the hairpin away, saying it gave her a headache, and secretly blamed my lingering spirit for bothering her. The imperial palace invited accomplished high priests to perform several rituals. Bowling and Yu Yi wanted to stop it but couldn't, believing that my soul truly remained in the palace and was dispersed by the eminent monks. The hatred between the three deepened significantly. Lin Lian, relying on Chu Hian's favor, gradually suppressed Bowling and Yu Yi until they were utterly defeated. However, within a few years, Bailing and the Lu family were executed for treason, and Yu Yi, who had lost her protection, was forced by her to marry far away to the frontier for a political alliance, and she perished 2 years ago. Chunwan, once a highly envied head palace maid, was demoted to a lowly servant in the laundry room. Just when she finally managed to leave the palace, Lin Linian sent people to disfigure her face and break her legs, discarding her like a beggar at the foot of the city wall. If Chu Lanyuan hadn't happened to pass by, Chunwan would probably have died. Then, due to lack of medical treatment, blood tears streamed from Chunwan's tightly shut eyes, and she clutched my hand tightly. Your Majesty, you must avenge the Crown Prince and Princess. My heart twisting in pain, I nodded, took a deep breath, and my voice was filled only with bone-chilling coldness. Don't worry. If this revenge is not taken, I swear I won't be human. Whether it is Chu Hian who broke his promise, or Lin Linian who harmed my children, I won't let any of them off. After comforting Chunwan, I went to Chu Lanyuan to thank him for taking her in, and incidentally, told him my idea of entering the palace. Chu Lanyuan was surprised, and asked hesitantly, why do you want to enter the palace? Brother Emperor probably won't easily believe that you've come back from the dead, and Empress Lin and the Crown Prince won't let you off either. I smiled coldly. They won't let me off. And I won't let them off either. Since you believe in something as impossible as coming back from the dead, why don't you believe I have a way to get revenge, or are you trying to stop me? The moment Chu Lanyuan opened his mouth, I was already prepared. If he didn't approve, I would erase this memory, and find an opportunity to enter the palace by myself. Chu Lanyuan hesitated for a moment, then said in a deep voice, Will you kill my royal elder brother? I narrowed my eyes and retorted, do you want me to kill him? Chu Lanyuan was a bit lost. I don't know. By blood, they were brothers. But in the royal family, how much brotherly affection is there? Watching Chu Lanyuan's hesitant expression, I smiled softly. Actually, you don't have any feelings for Chu Hian. If he dies, it won't do you any harm. Do you want to be emperor? Chu Lanyuan was startled. I repeated, staring intently into his eyes and activating my hypnosis. Has your heart really never had any thoughts about the dragon throne he sits on? Chu Lanyuan was captivated by me, and unconsciously spoke his true thoughts. I've certainly had thoughts, but Chu Hian isn't that easy to deal with. After the Lu family was eradicated, most of the military power was taken back by him. My subordinates are currently no match for his. It is okay, I'll help you. With your talent, you are certainly no inferior to Chu Hian. I didn't tell Chu Lanyuan that after Chu Hian's sudden death, he would also be one of the warlords vying for supremacy. If a new emperor were to be chosen to sit on the dragon throne, I decided to choose him, considering he helped me save Chunwan. Chu Lanyuan stared fixedly at me, gritting his teeth and saying, "Okay, I believe you. Whatever you need me to do, just say it." I smiled faintly, and had him help me create a false identity. Although the system also had multiple backgrounds for me to choose from, those were all from official families, prepared to facilitate my entry into the palace as a concubine. I no longer wanted to implicate innocent people, so naturally, an orphan girl whose parents had both died was the best option. Before infiltrating the palace, Chu Lanyuan was worried, and reminded me, "Be careful in everything." Lin Lian seems to have a connection with 7th Imperial Uncle, framing Bailing, bringing down the Lu family. If you think about it carefully, 7th Imperial Uncle was also present. You mean, Chu Yuntian? I had a bit of an impression of him. He was also one of those who participated in the struggle, after Chu Hian's sudden death. Deep-minded, endured and bided his time for many years. My eyes flickered. A thought emerged in my mind. And I said to Chu Lanyuan, "What is your relationship with him?" "Who?" "7th Imperial Uncle." Chu Lanyuan shook his head. "He almost always stays in his fiefdom. Only in recent years our relationship isn't particularly close." "Then, can you get a strand of his hair?" "Hair? What is the use of that?" Chu Lanyuan asked, looking at me confusedly. I smiled and said, "I'll tell you why after I enter the palace and meet Lin Lian. In short, if you have the chance, keep a strand of his." Chu Lanyuan was stunned, though he didn't understand. He still agreed to me. Under his arrangements, I used the alias, Sha Tang. And as a palace maid, I was led into the palace. Although 20 years had passed, there were still old people in the palace who recognized this face of mine. They didn't identify me as Lu Yao like Chu Lanyuan did, but rather, like Lin Lian and Consort Yun. They took me for someone who looked like the late empress. Their gazes kept falling on my face, carrying complexity, surprise, and even a hint of fear, because it was truly too similar. "No." I quietly lowered my gaze and looked at the ground, as if I hadn't noticed those strange gazes, but my heart couldn't help but stir. Not concealing my original appearance was precisely because I wanted to see what kind of expression Chu Hian would have upon seeing this unchanged face again. However, what I waited for— "Her Majesty, the Empress has arrived." The eunuch's high-pitched voice rang out, and a luxurious and noble palanquin stopped outside the courtyard. Lin Lian, wearing a phoenix coronet, walked towards me step by step. "Is this her?" Lin Lian's gaze swept over me as she casually asked the wet nurse beside her. That wet nurse was an old acquaintance of mine, who had seen me before, and she nodded affirmatively. "Your Majesty, it is her. What a true beauty, truly peerless." "Oh, this Empress didn't realize when a beauty like this appeared among the maids." She pointed at me and said, "From now on, you will come serve in my Phoenix Palace." I answered with a yes and left with them. The other palace maids either enviously or pityingly watched me leave, but I never showed a hint of emotion. Upon arriving at the Phoenix Palace, Lin Lian sat on a soft couch, waved her hand, dismissing everyone else, leaving only me and the old maidservant beside her. I stood in the center of the room. Lin Lian's eyes flickered. She scanned me a few times, then suddenly sneered. So, that is how Empress Lu looked back then. This is what she looked like. Nothing special, really. She had praised my appearance just moments before. But in a blink, her expression changed, with a clear, undeniable flash of jealousy. Jing Momo, this servant is here. Destroy her face for this empress. This empress feels sick just looking at this face. Lin Lian's expression suddenly twisted fiercely. Vicious words spewed from her red lips, as if she wanted to see me terrified and flustered. With a ghastly pale face, I raised my head and gave her a cold smile. Lin Lian's eyes met mine, and immediately, she became bewildered. Before she could react, I grabbed her hair and viciously slapped her. Whack! A crisp sound rang out, and Lin Lian's cheek instantly became red and swollen. Mama Jing stared dumbfounded at this scene, about to step forward to stop it, but was also fixed in place by me with hypnosis. I let go, then erased what had just happened, and retreated back to the center of the room. Lin Lian instantly forgot what she had said, and after the hypnosis ended, it was a while before she spoke. She was just about to repeat the previous conversation, when she suddenly felt something was wrong. She touched her cheek, and it was painful and stinging, as if she had been hit by someone. Why does Lin Lian looked at Mama Jing in confusion. Mama Jing looked carefully for a couple of times, and said suspiciously, "Oh, your highness's cheeks are a bit red and swollen. Could it be an allergy?" What? Quickly summoned the imperial physician. Lin Lian valued her face the most, having spent great effort maintaining it. So as soon as she heard about an allergy, she immediately became anxious, no longer bothered with me, and after entrusting me to other palace maids, she anxiously took a mirror to look at herself. I walked out of the room, a strand of hair plucked from Lin Lian's head clamped between my fingers, and curved the corner of my lips. Obviously, that exchange just now was enough to prove that Lin Lian did not have the same system as me. Her body had also not undergone modification, so logically, she shouldn't get pregnant with Chu Hian's child. Then Chu Hongyang's true identity becomes a bit intriguing. My eyes flickered, and I asked the palace maid next to me, "Do you know where Prince Hongyang is?" That palace maid's eyes widened, and she instinctively replied, "In the imperial study." "When will he come to visit the empress?" "Probably, afternoon." "Thank you." I ended the hypnosis, lowered my gaze, and once again completely concealed my sharpness. At noon, I waited on the path he must take when leaving the imperial study. At that time, flowers fell like rain outside the corridor. I turned back and smiled into the sunlight, precisely meeting Chu Hongyang's eyes. The young man froze, a flicker of awe in his eyes, staring at me, unable to look away for a long. I sneered in my heart, but my gaze became even more gentle and charming, maxing out the charm points granted by the system. Chu Hongyang was stunned for a long time before coming back to his senses, couldn't help but take a few steps forward, and said infatuatedly, "What is your name? Whose palace maid are you?" I smiled sweetly. "This servant is Xia Tang. I just arrived today to serve in the Empress's palace, from Mother Empress's palace." Chu Hongyang's eyes lit up, seemingly smitten. "Are you willing to come to my side?" "This servant is certainly willing." I was overjoyed, which made Chu Hongyang's heart restless again. Upon arriving at Fengguang Palace, he almost impatiently suggested that he wanted to claim me. Lin Lian naturally refused. She saw the desire in Chu Hongyang's eyes, glared fiercely at me, and sneered, "You really are something, to have enchanted the crown prince the very first time you met him. Such a menace. This consort must get rid of you." After saying that, she again had wet Nurse Jing bring a pair of scissors, ready to make a mark on my face. Chu Hongyang, seeing this, immediately blocked in front of me. "Empress Mother, don't." I clutched the corner of his clothes, looking utterly pathetic. "Crown Prince." Chu Hongyang gazed intently, held my hand, somewhat dissatisfied with Lin Lian's viciousness. Empress Mother, Tanga is just a maidservant. Why must you make things difficult for her? Seeing the disapproval in the young man's eyes, Lin Lian trembled her lips, her face a bit pale. Hongyang, Empress Mother is doing all this for your own good. Chu Hongyang avoided her gaze, and said indifferently, if it is truly for your son's good, then please agree to your son's request. Are you threatening, Empress Mother? Lin Lian looked at me with eyes that seemed capable of murder, suddenly picked up the scissors on the table, and fiercely slashed at my face. I didn't dodge, and directly endured that blow. Instantly, blood splattered. I covered my face, let out a short and helpless scream, and tremblingly fell into Chu Hongyang's arms. Chu Hongyang failed to block in time, both shocked and angry. Empress Mother, Lin Lian saw my face covered in fresh blood, and laughed gleefully, as if venting a bout of malice, saying carelessly, my son, what kind of stunning beauty can't you have? This Fey woman, she is not worthy of you. Chu Hongyang said nothing, but merely watched Lin Lian with a cold gaze, clearly not thinking that way. He was smitten at first sight, but his beloved was hurt right before his eyes. I clearly didn't do anything wrong, just because I liked someone. I was treated like this by Lin Lian. Chu Hongyang said softly. Mother, don't you think you're cruel? Lin Lian noticed his cold expression, and couldn't help but freeze. I'm doing this all for your own good. Is that so? Is it really for me, or for your own selfish desires? With unspoken disappointment in his eyes, Chu Hongyang picked up the injured me and left Fengluan Palace. Lin Lian told him to stop, but he didn't listen, and the mother and son parted ways unhappily for the first time. Xiatang, I'm sorry. I didn't know Mother. She would actually be so obsessive. Inside the Eastern Palace, Chu Hongyang summoned an imperial physician to treat me. But because Lin Lian had cut too deep, a scar was inevitably left. I didn't complain at all. I just asked him to bestow upon me half a mask for concealment. From then on, the Eastern Palace had one more disfigured maidservant. Lin Lian hated me to the bone, but constrained by Chu Hongyang, she couldn't easily do anything more to me. After night fell, I left the Eastern Palace, and amidst a clear moonlight, arrived at Changqing Palace, where Chu Hian was sleeping. Tonight, he didn't go to any concubine's place, but rested alone in the palace. I quietly snuck in, picked up a strand of his hair that had fallen by his pillow, and together with Lin Lian's and Chu Hongyang's hair, I used the system to conduct a DNA test. That is right. It is really too easy to determine whether Chu Hongyang is Chu Hian's child. Just do a DNA paternity test, and everything will come to light. I stared intently at the system panel, and soon, the test results came out. Chu Hongyang, as expected, is not Chu Hian's son. He is Lin Lian, and someone else's bastard child. Chu Hian, you poisoned Beiling and married far away to Yu Yi. Did you ever consider that you personally killed your only two bloodlines? My heart turned cold, staring at Chu Hian's sleeping face. I could barely control my murderous intent. Chu Hian seemed to sense something, frowning slightly, looking restless in his sleep. I sneered silently, my figure quietly leaving, as if I had never been there. The imperial palace was still blooming with flowers. In mid-August, the annual Mid-Autumn Festival made the palace lively once again. Chu Yuntian, Chu Lanyuan, and some imperial relatives gathered at Lingxian Palace to attend this mid-autumn banquet. I waited outside Lingxian Palace, and Chu Lanyuan, taking advantage of no one noticing, left his seat and handed me a thin strand of hair. Here! What you wanted. I was drinking with the 7th Imperial uncle just now, and I pretended to be drunk to pull it off. Chu Lanyuan's gaze fell on my mask. He sighed softly, and his tone softened. I heard the Empress hurt you. I gathered my hair into my palm, immediately used the system to do a DNA test, and said nonchalantly, no worries. I deliberately didn't dodge, just to use the opportunity to leave Lin Lian's side. With her tying my hands and feet, she obstructs me from doing things. Chu Lanyuan hesitated to speak, but when he saw my eyebrow raise and my expression suddenly became meaningful, he couldn't help but ask, "What is wrong?" I looked at him, a corner of my lips curving up. "Your previous guess was right. Lin Lian indeed has a significant relationship with Chu Yuntian. I originally thought it would be difficult to find Chu Hongyang's biological father, but I didn't expect to guess it right on the first try. It was truly a case of searching high and low, only to find it easily." Chu Lanyuan was still a bit confused. "What do you mean?" I lowered my voice and said slowly, "Your Highness, don't you think Crown Prince and Chu Yuntian look somewhat similar?" Chu Lanyuan heard the implication in my words and was startled. His face flickered. "That is impossible, isn't it? How dare 7th Imperial Uncle? Confusing the royal bloodline is a capital offense. But Chu Yuntian did exactly that. He schemed for over 10, even 20 years, successfully replacing the Crown Prince with his own son." A sarcastic smile curved my lips. I turned and walked into the depths of the night, only saying one sentence to Chu Lanyuan: "Go ahead and drink with your 7th Imperial Uncle. And remember, the more the better. Alcohol can numb one's mind, and it can also stir up many troubles." For example, Chu Yuntian, who had drunk too much, they were supposed to discuss a secret matter, but for some unknown reason, a wave of fei rose from his lower abdomen. For example, Chu Hian was sobering up alone in the side hall, when suddenly, everyone around him disappeared, leaving only a familiar figure standing not far from him. "Who?" Chu Hian opened his eyes, and with great difficulty, in an instant, he widened his eyes. The woman who had passed away 20 years ago smiled at him gracefully, as if she had never left. "Your Majesty." This address instantly sobered Chu Han. His face was pale, and he looked at the woman in the hall in disbelief, as if in a dream. What should be the first reaction when a person who has been dead for many years appears before your eyes? Fear, panic, or ecstasy? Chu Hian's face was filled with complex emotions: guilt, fear, shock, joy, as if he felt everything. I hid in the shadows, using the holographic projection in the system to restore my former appearance. One by one, a bright halo surrounded me, like a ghost returned from the underworld, or a fairy flying from the moon. Chu Hian murmured, "Is it a dream?" He reached out his hand, extending it towards the projection in the hall. As expected, his body passed directly through it. Chu Hian couldn't help but pinch himself. After realizing this wasn't a dream, he exclaimed in shock, "Could it be Yao? Your spirit has returned to see me, the Emperor." "You? Why are you only appearing now?" I coldly curled my lips and said, "Your Majesty, where are my children?" Upon hearing these words, Chu Han instantly froze in place. I manipulated the image to walk closer to him step by step, asking expectantly yet, "Bowling, Yu Yi, you once promised me you would take good care of them. But now, where are they?" Chu Han's face instantly turned white. He avoided my gaze, clenched his fists, and said, "Don't you dare mention them to me." They defied their superiors, showed no respect for elders, not only harmed their own siblings, but also conspired with the Lu family to rebel, and even used cursed objects to hex me, the Emperor. That is why I, the Emperor, executed Bowling. At this point, Chu Hian seemed to have found an excuse. He turned around to look at me, straightened his back, and said, "I am not wrong, Yao. You can't blame me. If you must blame someone, blame them for betraying me." I started to laugh, my desolate voice spreading a chilling coldness through the hall. The Lu family was loyal and righteous. When did they ever harbor thoughts of rebellion? Bowling respected and loved you. Why would he do something rebellious? Yu Yi was your only princess, yet you cruelly married her off to a harsh, cold land. The prosperity of Shiguo was hundreds of times greater than its neighbors. Where was the need for a princess to marry for alliance? Don't you see, this is all a wicked plot, just to make you kill your son and daughter, to sever Chu Hian's bloodline, and let others take your place, I said sharply and sternly, slapping Chu Hian hard. And though the illusion passed through, causing no substantial harm, it still made his face flush red. And he retorted, "You're talking nonsense. Whether it is nonsense or not, just go see for yourself and you'll know. Right now, your beloved empress is engaged in passionate lovemaking with your imperial uncle, oblivious to everything around them. And the crown prince you personally supported is also their son. Chu Hian, how utterly tragic you are, deceived by others without even knowing it. Slaying loyal officials and good people. You will ultimately get your retribution." As soon as I finished speaking, the illusion dissipated with the wind, the direction of its dispersal pointing directly to the empty palace next to the Phoenix Palace. Chu Hian was in a daze, staring in that direction, and regardless of his disheveled hair, he sped away in big strides. The moonlight illuminated the empty palace, and outside the tightly shut palace gates, faint, intense gasps and moans could be heard. One of them was all too familiar to Chu Hian. His eyes turned bloodshot, and he violently pushed open the main gate. On the bed, Chu Yuntian was embracing Lin Lian, whose clothes were half undone. The two were indeed engaged in illicit activities. Chu Hian's blood rushed to his head. He trembled as he yelled outside, "Summon in Imperial Guards! Seize them for Jin!" A sharp shout woke Lin Lian, who was immersed in it. She saw Chu Hian with red eyes, staring intently at her, and was immediately scared out of her wits. Your Majesty, spare my life." Lin Lian hastily went to push Chu Yuntian. But Chu Yuntian was drugged, and his mind was not yet clear. By the time the Imperial Guards pulled the two apart, Chu Hian's face was already as dark as thunder. His eyes filled with tyrannical, murderous intent. Lin Lian knelt on the ground, trembling, and explained palely, "Your Majesty, your concubine was forced. It was 7th Imperial Uncle who forced your concubine." After regaining consciousness, Chu Yuntian also realized what happened. Wanting to take the blame, "It was I who got drunk and offended Her Majesty, the Empress. This humble prince deserves to die 10 times. The two were pressed to the ground by the Imperial Guards, barely clothed, and the intimate marks had nowhere to hide. Chu Hian sneered, 7th Imperial Uncle. Empress, do you really think I'm so stupid as to still believe your nonsense now? Speak. How long have you been secretly carrying on with him? Is Chu Hongyang truly my son?" Chu Hian squeezed Lin Lian's neck, continuously tightening his grip. Lin Lian rolled her eyes from lack of oxygen, her throat emitting a hoarse sound. Just then, there was another commotion outside, and Chu Hongyang barged in. "Mother." Seeing Chu Hian pinching Lin Lian's neck, and Lin Lian's face already purple, he quickly rushed up and grabbed Chu Hian's hand. "Father Emperor, what are you doing? What am I doing? Look at the good deeds your Empress mother has done." Chu Hian angrily let go, and only then did Chu Hongyang notice that kneeling on the ground along with them was Chu Yuntian, with his chest bared. The scent of musk in the hall had not yet dissipated. Chu Hongyang thought of something, and his face changed drastically. I stood in the distance, but my gaze could accurately see the scene in the hall, and I couldn't help but smile. Everyone is here. Next, it is time to reveal the truth. Chu Hian took a deep breath and said to the trusted head eunuch beside him, "Come. I want drip, blood, identify, kin." As these 4 words came out, Chu Hongyang couldn't help but collapse to the ground. He fearfully turned his head to look at his mother, only to find Lin Lian already drenched in cold sweat, her eyes filled with despair. This mid-autumn festival was destined to be an extraordinary night. Inside the Phoenix Luan Palace, the head eunuch carefully held the vessel and placed it in front of everyone. Under the supervision of the imperial physician, Chu Hongyang's blood and Chu Yuntian's blood were dripped into the water. Before long, the 2 drops of fresh blood merged. Chu Hongyang's face was ashen, and Lin Lian fainted directly. Chu Hian stared fixedly at the merged bloodstains, and furiously knocked over the vessel. Guards, depose Lin Lian from her position as empress, and confine her to the cold palace. King Qi and the crown prince are to be imprisoned. No one is to speak of what happened today. After all, it was a shocking royal scandal. The palace staff knelt all over the floor, silent as cicadas in winter. Chu Hian slumped into his chair. Having dealt with everything, as if he had aged 10 years in an instant. When he was young, he prided himself on being wise and mighty. But in middle age, he was played like a puppet. Could it be that he really harmed his only bloodline? Chu Hian propped himself up and summoned his trusted minister. An old case from 5 years ago began to be re-examined. The palace changed dramatically. The more they investigated, the more Chu Hian discovered that Lin Lian had hidden from him. Under torture, every detail of how Lin Lian framed Bowling and Yu Yi, and how Chu Yuntian incriminated the Lu family, was presented. Under duress from the cruel punishment, a broken Chu Yuntian also confessed that he had been secretly manipulating things for the past 10 years or so. Lin Lian was his pawn, rescued by him because her face resembled that of concubine Yun, and placed beside Chu Yuntian. Imperial nephew, I know I can't escape death, but compared to the mistakes you've made, my pain, imperial uncle, is nothing. Chu Yuntian laughed wildly, his laughter piercing, cutting Chu Hian's heart until it bled. In a fit of rage, he killed Chu Yuntian with a sword. To the outside world, he concealed the affair between Chu Yuntian and Lin Lian, only exposing his schemes against the Lu family and the late crown prince to the public. The Lu family and Bowling's grievances were redressed, and both the court and the common people of Shiguo were deeply shaken for a long time. I walked under the rainy eaves, holding an umbrella. Inside the cold, desolate East Palace, the eunuchs and palace maids had all scattered like birds and beasts. Chu Hongyang died not long after he was imprisoned. The rumor outside was that he died of illness. But everyone in the palace knew that Chu Hongyang was healthy, and he was clearly murdered. How could Chu Hian tolerate him? I curved my lips and kindly brought this news to Lin Lian, who was in the cold palace. She glared at me, as if looking at a monster. You're lying. Hongyang wouldn't die. You're tricking me. Lin Lian, with disheveled hair and disarrayed clothes, had long lost her former haughty demeanor. Instead, she pounced at me like a shrew. I easily dodged, grabbing her hair, and gently chuckled. Why would I lie to you, now that Chu Hian knows his parentage? Do you think Chu Hongyang could still live? Lin Lian couldn't help but sob, tears streaming from her eyes. I watched her agonizing expression, my eyes flickering. You also know the pain of losing a child now, don't you? When you harmed my children, did you ever imagine this day would come? You are Lu Yao. Lin Lian finally reacted, her eyes widening in terror. I smiled slightly, my voice growing softer. It is me, I'm back. Everything you did, you'll have to pay back. With that, a pair of scissors slid out from my sleeve. Lin Lian struggled hard, but I held her firmly. The sharp, cold blade cut through her flesh, from her jaw all the way to her brow bone. Lin Lian opened her mouth wide in pain, but I quickly blocked her sound with a cloth. One stroke after another, I carved up that face she treasured most until it was mutilated. As miserable as Chunwan was, I made her just as miserable. The sharp scissors pierced her eyes. Lin Lian's eyes streamed with bloody tears, staining her clothes mottled and messy. A pair of flailing legs. I broke them, dragging them twisted on the ground. I dragged her, she was already too weak to struggle. Her head pressed into the filthy, foul-smelling pond water, again and again, until Lin Lian completely lost strength. Her wounds turning white from the water, her mouth and nose full of mud and sand. Only then did I release my hand. She plunged in, her face still lingering with terror, forever ceasing to breathe. It wasn't until the 5th day that the palace maids privately said that it was the former empress's ghost at work. Coming for revenge, Chu Hian took one look from afar, vomited incessantly, couldn't eat, and his spirit plummeted. He fell ill. The affairs of the imperial court were gradually handed over to others, and Chu Lanyuan, as his third brother, naturally took this position. I was still the disfigured palace maid wearing a mask in the palace, but the place I served moved from the East Palace to Changqing Hall. Logically speaking, a woman like me, whose appearance was ruined, should not have appeared before the emperor's carriage. But Chu Hian had frequent nightmares recently, so I offered a calming remedy and was exceptionally promoted. Before going to bed at night, I poured incense into the censer. Chu Hian stared at my face and suddenly said, "Your eyes. They make me feel somewhat familiar. Have I seen you somewhere before?" I sighed and took off my mask. The scar that Lin Lian had made was gone. There were countless beauty and scar-removing pills in the system's database. This was also the reason why the system chose me in the first place. I turned my head and looked at Chu Hian. His eyes flashed with shock, and he asked in astonishment, "Ayao?" I walked towards him and sat on the edge of his bed. Chu Hian reached out. Chu Hian was bewildered, trying to get up from the bed, but after struggling a few times, he fell back down again. A strange look flashed across his face, and he looked at me suspiciously. "Ayao, why am I so weak all over?" I pointed to the censer, and he blurted out, "You put soft bone powder in it." "That is right, Your Majesty." I looked at him, my gaze just as it was back then, but Chu Han broke out in a cold sweat and reprimanded, "Bold. What do you intend to do?" "Nothing much. It is just that Your Majesty broke his promise, so this concubine wishes to punish Your Majesty a little." In front of him, I poured the prepared Qianji poison into the wine and filled a cup for him. Chu Han's expression changed dramatically. "How dare you?" "Why wouldn't I dare?" I smiled, forced open his mouth, and poured the wine in. "Everyone outside has been sent away. Your Majesty, enjoy this beautiful night to the fullest. Qianji is a potent poison. Once ingested." Chu Han's nose and mouth bled, his limbs convulsed uncontrollably, and he thrashed on the bed like a fish out of water. He let out a hissing growl, his eyes bloodshot, tossing and turning, eventually shriveling into a dried shrimp. The pain of the poison wouldn't let him die immediately. He would only gasp his last after prolonged torture. My poor Bowling was poisoned to death by his own father in this very way. "Chu Han, you deserve to die." I forced open his mouth and fed him a pill. Chu Hian, who was on the verge of stopping breathing, immediately regained consciousness. This was the antidote pill. I wouldn't let him die easily. I wanted him to taste 10 times, 100 times the pain. The wine glass was filled again. Chu Hian was in despair. I turned a blind eye, just feeding him wine all the time, watching him struggle, watching him suffer, watching him roll on the ground, without any imperial dignity, his neck stiff, his limbs twisted, like a ghost being tortured after falling into hell. I fed him an antidote pill, wiped away the dirty blood for him, and changed him into clean clothes. Chu Hian was drenched in cold sweat on his back, and said in fear, "What else do you want to do?" I smiled slightly. "Your Majesty, it is time to write the Imperial Edict of Succession." Hypnosis instantly activated. Chu Hian fell into a daze and ordered someone to bring the Imperial Edict. During the writing process, he still retained consciousness. I know this is because he is different from others. He is my target for capture. When the system AI was still here, it strictly warned me not to lay a hand on the capture target, but now it is gone, and no one can punish me. I watched with interest as he, stroke by stroke, handed over the country, and wrote down the name of his third brother. The moment the Imperial Edict of Succession was completed, His confidant ministers and Chu Lanyuan rushed over, only to see him for the last time. Chu Hian was conscious, but his body wouldn't obey him. And he spoke the contents of the imperial edict of succession. The many unwillingness, resentment, and panic in his eyes. Only I understood. He couldn't do anything, if he weren't the emperor, needing a dignified death to deceive the world. How would I have let him go so cleanly? Chu Lanyuan knelt before the palace hall, and the moment he received the imperial edict, he seemed a little lost in thought. His gaze swept past the crowd, looking at me, who was at the very end. I nodded at him. And then there were no more words. Everything was settled. The world outside remained unchanged. Although I used the system for revenge, I only left a suspicious legend in the palace. Chu Lanyuan might have suspected something, but he was smart enough not to ask. After all, I could help him gain the empire, and I could also make him lose it in an instant. After Chun Wan knew that Lin Limian and Chu Hian were both dead, she laughed a few times with satisfaction. I told her to wait for me a little longer, then went to the Say Why alone. When Yuzi's revenge was also exacted, I brought her remains back and buried her with bowling. That night, I had a dream after a long time. In the dream, there were thousands of flying flowers, light wisps of fragrant grass, and a pair of youngsters of similar height running towards me together. The young man was handsome, his eyebrows and eyes like a painting. The young woman was graceful, her eyes like water, lifting her skirt, as lively as a small swallow in the wind. Both of them called out, "Mom!" Their laughter, like bells, stirred my heart, instantly filling my chest with boundless tenderness. The predetermined life and death cannot be changed, but fortunately, I got to see them one last time. Knowing that they don't blame me, I can also leave in peace. Outside the prince's manor, I helped Chun Wan and left the capital. Knowing I was leaving, she insisted on coming with me no matter what. I asked her, "What if where we're going is a completely unfamiliar world?" Chun Wan didn't care at all and said firmly, "Wherever my lady goes, this servant will follow." I couldn't help but laugh and shook my head. "Chun Wan, I am no longer a lady, and you are no longer a servant." The system opened the way home. I used my accumulated points to exchange for medicine, and cured Chun Wan's eye disease and leg disease. She was reborn, almost unable to believe it. We walked on the radiant path, and she suddenly asked, "If I don't call you my lady, what should I call you?" I watched the outline of home gradually become clear, and smiled, raising the corners of my mouth. "Call me by my name. My real name is Lu Qinging."